I'm going to record it. So, how'd it go with your worker? Did you bring him back okay? Do you work?
It, it was really raining, and he thought it would be a good idea not to come in and work.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think you'll have enough.
That's weather, It's like there's always something, It's either technology or the weather or.
But yeah,
Yeah, and one nuclear bomb can ruin your whole day. It's like that guy, George Carlin. He was a comedian in the 70s, the 60s. And he said he played the hippy dippy weatherman with your hippy dippy weather man. And he would be on there and he would say, out of cold, there's a line of thunderstorms coming in, from the north, but there's also a fleet of ICBMs coming from Russia, so don't sweat the thunderstorms. Uh, but anyway, let's go start here. I don't want to waste too much time. Um, we're on the 93.4. I just want to continue with this because it's so much nectar. Can you see that, Devananda? Real good because I
Yeah,
increased the font size.
yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and start reading this first paragraph, and then we can take turns. After that, you can go, Dave. But read the first paragraph.
This is a Bhagavan has no experience of material misery. With regard to the second objection that Bhagavan is subject to favoritism, we say the following. One engages in giving delight to others for two possible reasons: to attain what one desires from the other, or sometimes just to fulfill the other's desire. The first option is not relevant to the objection raised here, because when one acts for one's own interest alone, there's no question of partiality whatsoever toward others, since one's concern would then be only with oneself.
Okay, go ahead, Dave.
in the second case, the desire to engage in acts favorable to another raises only after experiencing firsthand their happiness and misery, not merely by some general awareness of it. This is because there is no possibility of the heart undergoing a transformation in the form of compassion without having been touched by another's pain, as is said.
Go ahead, read, continue.
Uh, One whose foot has been pricked by a thorn would not desire others to suffer such agony. Having understood the sameness of all living beings in regard to the experience of pain through external signs, but not a person who has never been so pricked.
Therefore, for Bhagavan, who has an eternal form of supreme bliss and is ever free from sin, there is no experience of the material misery called, quote, pleasure, end quote, or of that which is commonly known as misery, just as there is a complete absence of darkness in light or of an owl's capacity to see the sun. Prabhupada talked about that, one time. He said, this is an owl civilization, and we have come here to fight with the owls. He said, if you say, my dear owl, please open your eyes and see the sun, the owl will say, no, and keep his eyes closed. There is no sun. I don't see. So he said we have to fight with these owls. It's not like, you can just go on preaching and expect everybody to uh, accept it. If everything's accepted, accept everything nicely, then there would be no question of preaching. Everybody would just accept it, but they don't accept it. So therefore, we have to pry open their eyes with the torch of knowledge through logic and reason and all kinds of different tricks. Go ahead, David,
Mhm.
on to read the next paragraph.
Some, although desiring to deny the relation with misery in Bhagavan, speak in the following way. There is knowledge of the experience of misery in God, yet that knowledge is of the misery experienced by others and not his own misery. Such an explanation, however, is like finding oneself face to face with the toll man at the river crossing in the morning, and after taking a roundabout path throughout the night to avoid him. That is, the very same problem still exists. The experience of misery verily means that such misery touches the heart, whether such contact comes from one's own misery or, or from that of another, because there's no distinction as to whether the heart's relation with misery arises from one's own suffering or that of another.
Go ahead, Dave.
The flaw voiced by some, posited by some, of Bhagavan not being omniscient because his absence of awareness of misery is also negated by the very same example of the sun, indicating that Bhagavan's non-awareness of misery in no way contradicts his omniscience. Just as the absence of darkness in the sun does not obstruct the all pervasiveness of its radiance. On the contrary, Bhagavan's non-awareness of misery has been shown to be an attribute.
So Krishna is not aware of anyone's misery, but he's also all pervading. So, you know, he acts like an ordinary man sometimes. Like when Shalva cut off his father's head, he was momentarily bummed out, right? But when he's not acting in that way,
Mhm.
he is omniscient. He knows everything. And similarly, when the cowherd boys went into the Agasura demon, he was a little bit depressed, but then he just,
Mhm.
he acts like that. The next chapter of this that I'm reading now talks about how he sometimes acts as an ordinary man, conditioned soul. He'll act like he's being conquered by the demons, or sometimes he'll take the help of the demigods and try to, be the oppressor or the oppressed in either case. And he does all this just for the sake of his devotees, to enliven his devotees, because the devotees, it makes everything interesting, just like,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
the he'll do these things, and it's pretty bewildering to some extent, because it's just like when some sage commented that he's the supreme personality of Godhead. He's controlling. It's all the demigods are worshiping him, yet he's a little baby that's running away. He's playing in the back of Nanda Maharaj's backyard, and he's running away from Mother Yasoda out of fear.
Yeah.
But so
Mhm.
it's really sweet, and it's just all he does is for the pleasure of his devotees. He doesn't know anything else. Just like it said in the last couple of things that we read the other day. Okay,
And
let me continue
the
on here.
other thing is,
Go ahead.
the other thing I was reflecting was, we're speaking here of misery and pleasure, and we see that Bhaktisiddhanta was quoting pleasure, so-called pleasure. So when we speak of misery and pleasure, we're this is being written also for our understanding, but our understanding of misery and pleasure is, it's in the realm of duality, and that can't be applied to the supreme absolute truth, because everything is absolute in him. So misery and pleasure in the absolute, in one sense, are non-different. So
Yeah.
that explains also the absence. It explains, in one sense, the absence of misery in Krishna, because is he is absolute. So-called, it's a show. It's all a play, and it's his first transcendent. It's all
Yeah. It's
transcendental
his
bliss.
Leela. It's Krishna's play
Yeah.
for the pleasure of his devotees. And because he is reciprocating with his devotees, as they reproach me, I respond accordingly. That is actually an attribute. That's what it means. It
Mhm.
says it's an attribute. His non-awareness of misery is an attribute because he is above it all,
Yeah.
and he doesn't experience the misery really in the same sense that we, you know, will experience misery. We don't get he don't You don't see him like really bummed out and going behind the barn and in the Goshala and smoking a cigarette with a frown on his face. You don't see that. He's always
Mhm.
happy. Whereas we get depressed and we're happiness and distress. He's like he said, rise above these things. And the way you rise above the happiness and distress of the material world is just to surrender to Krishna. And that way you can be equal to all. Even though he sometimes takes sides and he sometimes chastises the demons, we can do the same thing. We can rise it above it all and also sometimes chastise the demons and play with the devotees if we surrender to Krishna. So if we do everything on the impetus
Mhm.
of Krishna's mercy, what he's doing, and just kind of do that favorably, whatever he's calling us to do from within the heart, and as instructed by Guru Sadhu and Shastra, then we can also be
Mhm.
above the modes and not become bewildered and fall down into the ocean of suffering, which is happiness and distress. And we can actually, doesn't matter where
Yeah.
we are, even in hell, devotee's happy because, he's serving Krishna, not because in any particular location. So he's never afraid of anything.
Mhm.
Therefore, let it be admitted that there is some knowledge of misery in regard general in Bhagavan, though he certainly has no direct experience of misery. Consequently, even though the jivas are suffering from material miseries even at present, in spite of the rulership of Bhagavan, who is utterly capable of all action, all inaction, and all contrary action whatsoever, and who is the crest jewel among those who are benevolently disposed to others to the extreme extent, the flaw of cruelty in him, in other words, in Krishna, is denied precisely for this reason, because of his not being directly in contact with their suffering. Go ahead,
Mhm.
Dave. You can read the
Mhm.
paragraph.
The happiness of devotees, however, is indeed a form of Bhagavan's devotion, and their misery too is simply a consequence of obstacles in attaining him. By this, the melting of the heart for Bhagavan is greatly increased, and this is nothing other than bhakti. Sometimes, as in the case of a Gajendra, where the misery experienced is purely of the material variety, bhakti becomes manifest in the same way through the utterance of expressions such as, He alone is my refuge.
Yeah, I mean, when a devotee calls out to Krishna, like Gajendra was in trouble because he was in the water and the crocodile was getting stronger and stronger and the elephant was getting weaker and weaker because that's not his spot. It's not where he can thrive. And so when he surrendered, he understood that from his past lives that he was an eternal servant of Krishna, and he remembered that, and he just called out in surrender. He alone is my refuge. And so
Mhm.
that's when Krishna came and cut off the crocodile's head. And similarly,
Mhm.
when Draupadi was being disrobed by the Kauravas, she just lifted up her
Mhm.
hands and surrendered to Krishna, and he provided unlimited amounts of sari so that she wouldn't be exposed to their lusty eyes. So he always saves his devotee if they're surrendered. As you surrender to me, I reward them accordingly. So
Mhm.
it's just a reciprocation. It's not because particularly the misery that he's feeling compassion, because of their misery. He's trying to reciprocate with his devotees basically on on that loving bhakti relationship.
Mhm.
Therefore, he's always blissful. He's never affected either by good or bad, you know. So we have to be like that also. Go ahead, Dave.
Sometimes, as in the case of the twin Arjuna trees, the devotion of devotees like Sri Narada becomes manifest. Thus, it is exclusively the experience of a devotee's devotion in the form of humility that impels Bhagavan to compassion and not material misery, because it is wrong to assume an inappropriate cause when an appropriate one is available. Moreover, if the existence of misery were the sole cause behind his compassion, then the sufferings of the worldly existence would have been completely uprooted.
Yeah, so Krishna doesn't care about the only way to approach him is through humility and bhakti. Otherwise, you know, the sufferings of the material of humanity are not really affecting him. I mean, sometimes it's his indirect will. Just like there's about a verse that I made into a meme. It had a picture of all these, the insurrection attacking the Capitol, and he said the plans of these materialistic politicians is just an indirect plan of the Lord, so that the humanity can experience the bitter fruit of their godlessness. So all these people are fussing and fighting and creating wars and they're doing all these things, uh, basically because that's a reaction to their godless civilization. And it's an indirect thing. I mean, Krishna wants everybody to surrender to him, but he's not going to intervene. And sometimes he even allows things to happen. Not a blade of grass moves without his sanction, but at the same time, um, in order for people to receive their just deserts, he'll allow things to happen. Like, sometimes the demons will be prominent, sometimes the devotees will be prominent. And it's like
Mhm.
a back and forth. And these things are always temporary, but Krishna is always above the fray. And he comes down just to, because his devotees like to see him engage in these human-like pastimes because it's really interesting. There's never a dull moment. Okay, if,
Mhm.
however, one argues that material misery is undeniably an indirect cause, then let it be so. There is no harm. Therefore, it is established that in either case, it is only the experience of the devotee's bhakti that impels Bhagavan to bestow delight upon his devotee. Go ahead, Devananda.
Thereafter, thereafter, this is to be pointed out. If in spite of directly experiencing the happiness and misery of others,
Can't hear you.
but Shiv Bhagavan, like a wish-fulfilling tree, is not liable to such accusation because there is no experience of happiness or misery in him. Read the rest. It is stated by Sri Moreau.
Yeah, you're going in and out there. Go ahead and read. I'll read this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. No one is dear to him, nor is he anyone's bosom friend. There is no one who is not dear to him, nor anyone who is an object of hate or even indifference. Nevertheless, he loves and serves his devotees exactly as they love him, just as a tree from the heavenly realm rewards those who approach it with the specific objects they seek. They're talking about desire trees. That's why we pray to devotees. A devotee is just like a desire tree, can fulfill the desires of everyone. So Krishna is like that too. He's not partial just because he rewards some devotees and doesn't reward the demons. Or he's like a desire tree. He rewards whoever approaches and asks for something, just like a desire tree will do that in the heavenly realm. And that is not partiality on behalf of the tree. That's just the way it works. Good. You can,
Can I ask a question?
sure.
Um, why does Queen Quinty keep asking for miseries to keep coming? I mean, she's suffering a lot. She's seen the good of Krishna, and then been through one of us have been through all those trials and tribulations. Why is that her constant prayer that the miseries keep coming?
Yeah, it's like that shit happens verse, you know. The Protestants say, let shit happen to somebody else. If shit, and the Catholics say if shit happens, we deserve it. If the Jews say, why is this all the shit always happening to us? And then you know, King Kunti says, let the shit happen again and again. The reason is because when shit happens, Krishna comes. You know, because we call out to Krishna, and there's no atheists in the foxholes. That's why sometimes it's good that, you know, some kind of like a calamity happens here on earth, because then we have a tendency to wake up and realize that we're not in control of things. We're you know, like Dave Marita Swami used to say that when he was like, before he came to New Vrindavan, he was like preaching in Eastern Bloc European countries, you know, in the communist behind the Iron Curtain even. And he said in Europe, people were a little bit less, they were a little more sober because they had so many wars. But in America, everybody's like slapping each other on the back and whooping it up, and they feel entitled to their sense gratification. When that's taken away, people are going to be pissed. And it's going to be taken away pretty soon. You know, in the next few years, there's going to be like a series of economic calamities, according to historians that know what they're talking about. So, you know, get ready. But it might be good for people, you know, because then they'll actually be able to hear from devotees, because they're, you know, demigods can't hear very much because they're always in such a situation that they're enjoying too much, you know. But when you're like in happiness and distress, sometimes you have, you know, there's only two people that are actually enjoying. There's a pure devotee, and then there's a drunk that's laying in the street in the gutter. You know, if you ask the drunk, "How you doing?" and he said, "I'm doing all right, you know, I'm fine." You know, he's not. He's suffering like a dog, but he's so drunk that he doesn't even realize how he's suffering. But he thinks he's happy, and then pure devotee obviously is always happy. But everybody else in between is got misery. But Krishna doesn't see that misery. He only responds to the humility and bhakti of his devotees. But when we experience misery, in the case of Queen Kunti and her sons, that is an opportunity to call out to Krishna and realize that we're only dependent on him, and so we can actually redirect our consciousness and stop being the center of our, you know, existence, and our families to stop being the center of our existence, and we can put Krishna back in the center when calamities come. Therefore, you know, that's why Queen Kunti prayed like that. Very famous prayer. It's also extraordinary that anybody would ask that of Krishna, you know. Let let me suffer, you know, because then when I see you, because it's more valuable than suffering. A devotee doesn't have any fear or pain when Krishna is there. So, you know, if something causes them to be in that mentality, why wouldn't he pray for that? Okay, Devananda, you can read this Srimad Bhagavatam verse. Wait. Uh,
Back
yeah,
up
no one
one.
is dear to him, and no one is under. Or you can read that part. Can you read?
To me,
Yeah, yeah.
no one is dear to him. No one is dear to him. Nobody is undear. No one is his own, and nobody is a stranger to him either, because he, Bhagavan Hari, is the very self of all living beings. He is the beloved of all creatures, and this greatly fortunate Chitraketu, his dear servant, being of equal vision toward all and established, to perfect peace. Indeed, I too am a beloved devotee of the infallible Bhagavan.
You know who said that?
Who's speaking?
Yeah, you know who said that?
No.
Shiva.
Oh, that's
That was,
Shiva.
after
Okay.
Parvati cursed Chitraketu. Chitraketu was laughing
Yeah.
Lord Shiva because he was
Hmm.
sitting on she was Parvati was sitting on his lap, and he just thought that was like amazing. He was like in front of all these sages.
Hmm.
He started laughing, not out of mocking or sarcasm or anything, just because he thought it was just
It's
a
amazing.
ordinary thing. And she cursed him. She took it personally, but
Hmm.
Shiva understood his real mentality. But he accepted their curse. Chitraketu didn't care. He said,
Hmm.
"Whatever you say, goddess, I'll suffer." And then what did he do? He took birth as Ritasur or something like that.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah. And so Krishna is equal to all. Um, Dave, Dave, you can read the Prahlad's verse here.
Okay. Sri Prahlad to express the same sentiment. How wonderful are your acts, O Lord. You have created the worlds through the cosmic play of your immeasurable yoga maya. You are omniscient, the self of all beings, and of equal vision. So although you are naturally without bias, you hold your devotees dear simply because it is your nature to respond in the manner of a wish fulfilling tree in perfect uniformity with the core disposition of supplicant the supplicant.
Wish fulfilling tree responds exactly according to the wishes of the person who's desiring something. We all get what we deserve and desire. In the case of karma, we get all what we deserve, but in Krishna will fulfill the desire of everyone. It just says in the Bhagavad Gita, knock and it shall be answered. Open the door, or like, whatever that verse is in the Bible, ask and it shall be, you get an answer. We got about a little bit more than 2 minutes here. I think we'll just end here. Anybody have any questions or anything or comments?
I was thinking uh this is a technical question. Here Bhaktisiddhanta is using the word Bhagavan Hari when he's referring to Krishna's position in terms of the misery and happiness of the living entities. And but on the same
Not just
token,
saying that. This is Jiva Goswami's text.
yeah, but I mean, but the in the verses. Oh, this is Jiva Goswami. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and the commentaries are Bhaktisiddhanta, right?
No, the commentary is
Okay,
that we're not at the commentary yet. These
so
are verses from the Bhagavatam, and this part in the
um,
big text here, the commentary hasn't come yet. Commentary is farther down, like these, and then
okay,
it's like a little bit less. See, here's the commentary. The commentary is by the author of the book, Sri Satyananda Swami or Satyanarayan
okay,
or somebody.
okay,
He's not in
okay,
our Sampradaya, but he's definitely a devotee. I mean, this is a really good book.
right.
Yeah. So, what was your comment?
So, anyways, a technical question. Um, that okay? So Bhagavan Hari is not subjected to misery and the happiness of the living entities. And then, but we do have um, instances that you like mentioned, like when the devotees, the coward boys, entered into to Agasura, and then when Krishna's father's head was cut off by Shalva. So Krishna appears to experience the misery.
He appears to.
So
He acts like
I
that.
I guess what could explain it, and I'm sure that this is the answer, but that one of the features is Vishnu. One of the features is Vishnu, and the other one is actually Krishna. In other words, Vishnu is not subjected to the miseries of and happiness of others, but Krishna, in some ways, is subjected to the miseries and happiness of others, his devotees.
I don't know about that.
Or done, I guess.
This chapter, the following chapter, um, Bhagavan has no enemies. Uh,
Mhm.
Bhagavan, this chapter here, I read this, so you can listen to it if you want. We have about 1 minute remaining, as they say in hockey games. 1 minute
Mhm.
remaining. Bhagavan behaves as
Right.
if conditioned. You know, you can
Yeah.
listen to
Okay.
that
Mhm.
this chapter. It's not very long, but it explains
Okay.
why he acts in that way. And I don't think it's because he's Vishnu or acting as that incarnation or this incarnation. I think it's just what he does to please his devotees and to make it
Mhm.
interesting.
Right.
Anyway, thank you very much
All right.
for getting on, and
All
we'll
right.
talk to you whenever you can get on.
All
All right,
right.
thanks
Thank
so,
you.
so
Very much.
much. Sorry. Being,
Talk to you later.
yeah.
Okay. Very well.